Okay, we're live. We'll get going in just a few minutes. Just looking at the market, it's kind of an even day on the market. I did get a chance to grab Apple down, so I'm up $2 on that. That was a pretty nice, but it was down 450 at one point. Basically, Washington is controlling the market at this point. All the news headlines on the debt ceiling, on infrastructure, on the either $1.5 or $2 trillion proposal from Biden's agenda, whether those things pass or not will impact a lot of the stocks over the next 3-4 weeks. And but it's interesting, so many people watch politics. They watch MSNBC or Fox or CNN, but don't understand the economic impacts of it. And so one of the things we try to do here is talk about that, individual companies, stocks, and what it means for things like your retirement, 401k, and the cost of things and inflation. And politics without understanding economics is really not an understanding of politics. It has a very real impact on what's happening in the real world. And so we'll have podcasts probably next week where we'll talk more about what's happening in Washington. But for the time being, we've been having all the Board of Ed candidates on. We've had, I think, 5 so far. We have 3 left. We have Lord Troidel scheduled for tomorrow at 4 o'clock. And today we have Meaghan DeLucia. And just to give a little bit of background here, I have not been talking about which political party any of these candidates are. That's not an accident. Because it really doesn't matter. And one thing I said early on, I know that I've endorsed Cosgrove, those that support Cosgrove for that ticket. I can give very good explanations as to why I have done that. Going forward, I'll give formal endorsements and why I support him and his team in general to get in office. But when it comes to the Board of Ed, it traditionally has not been all that political. And that's a good thing. We want that in Brantford. If you're looking at what's happening in Guilford and how ugly it can get, thankfully Brantford has not reached that point, in my opinion, ever. So that's a good thing. So I have not been saying here's a Democratic team or the Republican team. There is no rhyme or reason as to who comes first or the order in which people are coming on the podcast. Basically, the first few people that came on asked to come on. We scheduled them. Then I reached out to others and get them on there. So there's no agenda here. And I have not mentioned party specifically because I don't believe it plays a significant role in the Board of Education, nor should it. We're looking at qualifications and we're looking at the makeup of that board. That said, I'll bring in Meaghan. Meaghan, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Very good. And so we talked for about 30 seconds before the podcast, and that was the first time I've ever met you. So many of the members I've met before, they've served before, what have you. The first time meeting you, I think your name came up for a seat in the past, and I think this is the first time you're actually running for it. So if you can, give us the 60-second, who is Meaghan DeLucia, family, professional life, that sort of stuff.
Sure. I'm Meaghan DeLucia. I moved to Brantford 10 years ago with my husband. I have 4 children, 2 in Walsh and 2 in Tisco. I work for CVS Healthcare in the medical underwriting department, and I have for 16 years. That's really my background. I have a bachelor's in healthcare management with a concentrated studies in international business and international marketing. That's just who I am.
CVS happens to be one of the companies I follow closely for stock reasons. You have a lot of very good things happening there. So whatever you're doing, good job. Keep it up. They could be trendsetters in the future when it comes to what CVS's can become from a healthcare standpoint. So it's really interesting and amazing to watch. They would be the future of healthcare in many, many ways. So, okay, well, we have, you're pretty much the second business person. I think Tim Rayner has a business background as well. So it is good to have some kind of mixture on that board. It's a good thing. So talk to me about 4 kids in the school system, none in the high school yet. So you have 4 active kids. I don't know what you're going to do when they're in high school, but talk to me about why you decided to run. What made you, what did you see? What stood out to you, maybe in dealing with your kids or the board, that you said, okay, I want to take a chance here and put my name on a ballot?
So I've always had interest in the Board of Ed. I followed it closely back when I lived in North Brantford. That's where we came from. And then when we moved to Brantford, the switch that happened was this past year, having 4 kids in the school system and COVID, it was a disaster at times. It was really hard, especially working full-time at home, plus the 4 at school, to give them their own space, to help them academically. And that's when I started going to the meetings and actively trying to change things, because I needed the kids to be back in school for their own health and social emotional learning and everything else, but especially, to get a normalcy back in this house, because it was a lot.
So without knowing, I don't want to name your kids or which child had what issues, but what were some of the issues that your kids had to deal with being out of school for so long?
So my middle schoolers tended to hibernate in their rooms. They would only come out for, when I cooked meals or if we had family time. But other than that, they were in their rooms because that was the only seclusive place that they can do their schoolwork. And then they just stayed in there. And then we had my younger kids. So at the time, my son was 3, and then I had another one in 3rd grade. And that was really hard because, they introduced a lot of fun time with activities, but it was running around the house during school time for the other 2, as well as I'm in work. And the 3-year-old would get riled up. It was a lot. My 3rd grader at the time also had some issues with reading. And he used to be on services, but because of COVID, we didn't have those services. So that was a big toll on us as well.
Okay, so there are people with special needs that did not get the assistance. And this isn't even being critical of the school system. There was not much they can do. It was the middle of the pandemic, yeah, but it was just some of the impacts. So once they started back up again, so last year there was a huge push by parents to get going. I know that well. I talk about it pretty much every day for forever. What was, when they got back to school, what was the impacts of being off for so long? What were the things they had to overcome?
So we had a lot of adaptation to learning, to getting back in the schedule. That was the hardest part, what days they were going back to school. They had to actually get up, get ready, versus just rolling out of bed and turning on their computers. And then we had, let's see, it's different by age group. So we had a lot of, missed assignments and getting back in that groove of classroom day-to-day work. And this year, we're getting back those smarter balance testing, and they're not looking pretty. I can tell you that. I've spoken to many parents and they're having the same issues. So it's just going to be, what is best to get them back on track, to get them back up to speed.
So if you were to take a seat on the Board of Education, you're going to be facing these issues going forward.
Absolutely, yes.
Based on, I know you're not an education professional, and that doesn't preclude you from running by any means. What do you see as something you would focus on if you were to get on this board?
So my biggest thing last year was communication. We weren't getting emails. There was no set expectations or goals to get us back into school. We had no information whatsoever on where the metrics were coming from and how we're utilizing those metrics in order to get us back into school. So I'm hoping that we can change that. I'm hoping that there's actual goals set and there's expectations met or ways to achieve those expectations with steps, more of like a business background, to try to give parents ideas of where we're going and how we're getting there.
Okay. Now, your business background is interesting here because usually when you're analyzing someone's performance, there's a very clear set of criteria, check marks, things you're looking for when you're doing that. You've been involved. I know this group about reopening school. You've been with Hornets Nation on Facebook. I've been involved with that as well. I know you've been a watcher here and watching this open up. In watching the superintendent handle either COVID, even prior to COVID, and then since then, how would you analyze the job he's done handling that to this point?
So without knowing the goals and expectations he has year over year, it's hard to say or to give a review in essence. I would say it was very poorly done at the beginning. everything was kept inside. It was almost like a small circle, and we weren't given any information. And this year, opening up, when we're full-time back at home, or back at school, I'm sorry, and he's having meetings with the parents and things like that, I think we're gaining traction in knowing more about what's going on in the schools. So COVID related, I think he got a very poor score, but in essence, listening to the parents and our concerns, I think it's getting better.
Okay, so that's a good sign. So you've seen improvement in the last just year or two.
Yeah, I would say in the last 3 months, we've definitely had improvement.
Okay, so that might be a reaction to parents really going forward and making those complaints and those concerns made known, including yourself. Okay. Let's analyze for a second some of the issues that we see in Guilford, because they may end up over here at some point. Things like wearing masks has been contentious, at least by a small group of people. Topics like CRT, critical race theory, have been contentious. Where do you stand on the mask issue?
The mask issue, as long as the kids are safe and in school, I think that's the most important part. We can't go against the governor's orders, but if we had clear expectations of how we can reduce the risks after the governor releases that mandate, then I think parents will be a little less agitated or anxious about what's going to happen. So I want to keep the kids as safe as possible. I want to keep them in school. And if that means masks are on right now because we have to, that's fine. But what are our goals? What are our steps to, go back to a normal school year?
Now you have 4 kids that are fairly young. How did they react to wearing the masks?
So I thought my youngest actually would be the worst. We tried to take him on a plane last year, and I kept food in front of him 24/7 because I was terrified we were going to get kicked off that flight, as many other families were. But he is phenomenal at it. And the others, they say that, sometimes they come home with a headache. Sometimes it's hot. At the end of the year, last year, it was rough. I'm not going to lie. But they're doing great, and they love to be in school. So they know and expect that to be part of their day. And, they roll with it. They're kids.
Yeah, it's funny. I said that on a podcast, I think about 3 weeks ago, that the kids, if you had told them they had to be in a full bodysuit to go back to school, they would have done it. Like, they didn't care. Yeah. And there were some parents that are going a little crazy over this, and I've seen some unmask our kids. I don't think the kids in general care. Most of them seem to be quite fine with it in school. So it's good to see that you had that experience as well. CRT has been a little more contentious, and it's kind of growing nationally from a political standpoint. Do you have thoughts? I know it's not been an issue in Brantford to this point. We don't know that it will be. Some parents have gotten up and talked about it briefly, but it has not really gained traction. Do you see that as an issue with the curriculum in Brantford in any way?
I don't see the issue currently with the curriculum. Okay. I think if there is concern, we should get some professional help on it to see, what the best curriculum going forward is, if that's a concern for parents. But as of right now, it hasn't been an issue in Brantford. I would like to keep it that way if possible. I have been following the Guilford, and it's a little bit stressful over there, to say the least.
No question. It's a little crazy on both sides, to be honest with you. I've never seen anything like it. It's just crazy. So outside of communication, which everybody has talked about and has been kind of the bugaboo for the superintendent for some years now, is there any specific educational goals, curriculum-related goals that you would see as a goal for the Brantford district?
I don't think there's any educational goals other than keeping equality between the school systems. I know that's a big contention with parents right now, especially in the elementary, where you have a lot of different backgrounds, and using those smarter balance testing to maybe group the students in who's lower. Maybe they need more tutoring or different programs that they can, work with. I think that would be a big step for the Board of Ed, especially after COVID. So taking those smarter balance testing, really looking hard at them and finding out where our flaws are, where our
weak points,
thank you, weaknesses are, and trying to build off that and trying to help those students and those children that are succeeding, not to let them fall behind either. I think that we need to encourage them and keep them going as well.
just want to respond to one of the comments that are coming here from Stephanie, that her kid care is about masks. And you can respond to this too if you'd like, but I will. It's really disheartening to dismiss or minimize parents' concerns regarding masks when we explain our children's medical problems. Stephanie, I don't think anybody's dismissing the issues. I have talked at length about those with hearing problems and have to seeing the teacher's mouth move, for example. There are people with medical concerns, and I think it's reasonable to think the school would make some allowances for some of them. I know some teachers have. In general, however, most of the children I've spoken to, and Meaghan, you're free to comment to this, have not had a significant issue with masks. I know your kids haven't. Has the school made some adjustments? Have you seen kids with special needs get some adjustments for masks?
So there was a family that their daughter had hearing impairments in my son's class last year, and they actually provided masks that have clear visibility for the mouth. And I know that they said that it was really hard for her last year. So I had mentioned maybe getting those clear visors to go over the teachers in those class, make an exception for that class based so that, it doesn't hinder that child's growth and development, and maybe case by case basis that the Board of Ed or the school systems, whoever it is, needs to make those decisions.
Okay. And I think we have, Stephanie, so she said it keeps getting framed as though kids don't care. First of all, if anybody framed it, that's me, Stephanie. And I do speak at times in generality, so I apologize for that. I think most of the children I've spoken to have not had a significant issue. But that said, we have a system in place whose job it is to make sure there's a floor to reach, whether it's an educational deficiency or a health issue that causes. So if we have masks that don't work properly or can't work for certain people, we have to make those adjustments. But certainly, if I was being too general with that, I apologize. That's not my intention. I do think the vast majority of children are okay with the mask there. When it comes to the equality between the schools and the smarter balance testing, we see a consistent theme with those tests, Meaghan, and that's Tisco does extremely well in a very good economic bracket, and then schools like Sliney and Murphy kind of lag behind Tisco. Is there something we can do to bring more equality in how those schools perform, or the help that those schools get to make sure there's some level playing field when it comes to results?
Well, I think there's investment, and we have a lot of money that was given to us from the government for COVID, and I think we should utilize most of that for investment into the children. And when I say investment, I mean Tisco has financial abilities that in our district that maybe the other districts don't have. Whereas, tutors become easily for some parents in our district, not all, but some, and they're able to afford different academic programs for their children. So if those things do work, then maybe those investment dollars can be given, a little bit more to Sliney or Murphy, and enabling those children to succeed as well.
Okay. And so have we made I don't know the answer to this, have we made a final decision on how that money is going to be spent?
No, they have not. I don't believe they have.
Okay. One of the things on the agenda tonight for the Board of Education is potentially the extension of the superintendent's contract. And one of the questions I've been asking most of the candidates is, I can ask you if you would extend that or not, but I could also ask you, would you put off that vote if you were a current member till after the election? So you spoke a little bit about Hamlet so far in this communication. If it was up to you, if you're an executive at the Board of Education and not CBS, and this person's in front of you and the job he's done, would you vote or support extending his contract?
I think you have to look at risk versus reward and see how many years he actually has left. Is it going to be a coasting kind of end of the contract? And, is it up to retirement and we don't see any rewards going forward? Or, are there rewards in what he's doing and advocating for now? So I don't know the goals and metrics that he has been given. And I can't honestly say that right now I would be for or against it. I'd have to actually look and see what he's expected to do and where we're going and make a decision based on that.
Actually, it's an interesting answer, because I do think, somebody just mentioned he has 2 years left. The question isn't whether it's 2 years left, it's what's after those 2 years. Is he looking at retirement? So is he just at the end of his career, right? Or is he looking for another move, a long-term stay here or another move somewhere else? That's an interesting question to ask. I don't know that it's been asked. Those discussions happen in executive session. The other question is, usually after an election, a vote takes place on a new chairman. And we've had John Prince for a little while. It's been somewhat contentious. I've been critical of him at times. Actually, I like John. He's a decent guy, but he may not be, questions on whether he should be chairman or not. How do you feel about the job he's done so far?
At the meetings, it becomes a little harsh at times, the way he speaks to people and the position he takes, not just people that are coming to view the meetings, but also the board members. I cannot say whether I would vote for or against it. I just know that I align myself differently than the views that are taking place. I am very excited that Tim got the communication approved, because I think that's very important, that the public doesn't have rights to change everything, and we don't know everything as parents. I can be 100% honest about that. But at least we can have that dialogue. We can ask questions that weren't answered and see where that goes. And if they have an answer for us that night, that's awesome. If not, they say, we'll get back to you. That's fine too. But I think I align myself more in that direction.
Okay. I'll ask Mary Grandy just posted a question or a statement here. She said, it's very difficult for teachers in the district. What happens when the child goes home and education is not a priority for any variety of reasons? How do we help the child and the family to recognize the priority of education? How do we help the families? Is more money the answer? I don't know. You have a response to that?
So it's going to be hard, because if the family doesn't value the education, that's a totally different mindset. And I wouldn't know how to change that. But maybe we can get social workers involved and see if they can make some sort of priority in regards to that. I'm not sure that I would be, I'm definitely not qualified to answer that, but maybe we can get somebody that is qualified to help us out in regards to those answers.
It is difficult for teachers, as Mary points out, though, because they are, I have made a statement in the past that a teacher in Madison is not better than a teacher in New Haven. The problem is you're dealing with different levels of involvement, economic brackets, different issues that they come from. And, teachers can only mold the clay that they're given. So in some cases where you're right, at home, if there's an educational deficiency, they can hire a tutor where they can't in many other areas, and they can provide so much more help. There's many parents who make sure the homework's done, many parents who never care about it all. So that is a difficult thing to do. And Mary brings a good point that we have to be careful how we hold teachers accountable. It's not always just those smarter balance tests. There's other things that play a role here. Jennifer says, Mary Grandy, I was upset to hear as well discussion that we are not equally spreading funds across elementary. What is that about? That is insane. I'll let you answer that, Jennifer, but I can answer that as well. But go ahead. Do you have a response to what she just said?
I don't think that the funds are not equally spread across the schools as of right now. I'm not in a position to say that. I don't know. But what I'm saying is that if there's deficiencies within the schools in different areas or weaknesses within the Smarter Balance testing, that maybe we elect to choose to spend more funds in regards to that. So it doesn't mean that it's just going to be Tisco or Sliney or Murphy, but it's those children that fall within that threshold.
Yeah, so I think I agree with you. So it may not be a matter of equality. It may not be a matter of everybody gets $1 million. It may be if one school is falling behind and needs more resources, we may have a disproportionate spreading of resources to get a more equal outcome, to give all those students more opportunity. Stephanie, it's also difficult for parents when the school teachers only appease us with empty promises regarding extra help with schoolwork. That's hard to answer. I don't know. Jen, you mentioned Tisco has more funding. I didn't see the funding yet, but that's just an answer to that question. Okay. First of all, I'm glad there are questions coming in and comments coming in, because that's a good thing that this interview is open. It's not just me asking questions. Somebody yesterday mentioned that I was harder on some candidates than others. I don't think I have been, but this is an open forum. You can ask questions and we can ask those live. But I do appreciate, and I know you and Tim bring this to the board, this understanding the business side of it. And sometimes when you're analyzing things, it helps you with that background to look at, a business way to analyze what's happening in outcomes. So, all right. So, give us we have a few minutes left here. Why would I vote for Meaghan DeLucia?
I want to bring accountability to the board. If there's a review or something that's said, I want to make sure that, I'm held accountable from the parents, from the teachers, from the district side. I want to make sure that, if I write my name on it, that I'm accountable for it. I think with the review this year, that was a little rough because it was an overall statement versus, everyone's specific view on it. I also will bring communication. I think that's extremely important. I know that there's a new position hired to better that. However, I really think that we need to have more communication and metrics and goals. Goals are number one. If we have goals and steps to meet them, parents will not be as divisive as they are right now. So I think that's really important. So that's what I want to do on the board.
Okay. Well, Meaghan, it takes a lot to put your name on a ballot. We appreciate it. You can be criticized, you can be praised, and a lot of things can happen, but to put your name out there means a lot. And I appreciate you doing that. Good luck with the election so far. I'm not endorsing anybody yet, but we're interviewing everybody and going forward. I know you have probably a busy month ahead of you. With a career, 4 kids, and running for office, that's pretty impressive. So Thank you for coming on. I appreciate it. And we'll talk soon. If we need you in the future, can we come back? Can we ask you to come back on?
Absolutely.
Okay. Meaghan, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good one. Okay. So I appreciate her honesty and the way she answers questions. There is a clear aspects to those that have business backgrounds. And those are the people who most often are going to ask about accountability, standards, things to measure, measurable goals. And so doesn't mean that's the only thing you should be looking for in candidates. We want parents who may not have that as well. We have whatever the case those backgrounds may be. But it's interesting to have the very different perspectives. We have really from if you were interviewing to hire a Board of Ed candidate in a secular setting, we have run the gamut. We have really good options in front of us. Every single person we've interviewed has been intelligent. They've been educated. They know how to, they have obviously kids. They've dealt with kids in the school system. So it's very impressive to go through these interviews. I've been impressed with all of these candidates. I know I'm going to be asked at some point to give formal endorsements, but I don't think you can go wrong with anybody. I think so far it's been really, really good. And I'm looking forward to talking to Laura Troidel tomorrow night. And then I have yet to schedule one more, and we'll do that hopefully for next week. That being said, guys, it's 4:30, so we'll let this go today. Tomorrow is Laura Troidel. I will be on at 4 o'clock. And then until then, I hope you have a great night, and we will talk to you soon. Enjoy your evening.